You're listening to All Hands on Tech. Come along as we get to know the people and businesses behind the province's ever-expanding tech sector.
Each episode, we'll chat with local experts to uncover the hidden gems that make Nova Scotia a hub for collaboration, innovation, and creativity.
All Hands on Tech is proudly produced by Digital Nova Scotia, the industry association for Nova Scotia's growing tech sector. Hey, welcome back to another episode of All Hands on Tech. I'm washed-up former TV news gal, Eilish.
And I'm former international podcast superstar Greg, and today we're diving into the world of digital inclusion.
Born out of a need for online connection during the pandemic, Geo Nova Scotia is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring all Nova Scotians have what they need to access the internet. While working alongside several different local partners, Geo Nova Scotia has provided all of the tools necessary to connect hundreds of households right across the province since they were founded in 2022.
We are excited to have Matt Spurway, the Executive Director of Geo Nova Scotia, join us now to share some insights on their impactful work, future goals, and how they're making a difference in Nova Scotia's digital landscape.
Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Alice. Hey, Greg.
All right, listen, we're going to jump into all of the incredible work that you and your organization do, but first, we want to know a little bit more about you.
So I'm going to start with a few icebreakers. First one is, what's your go-to browser? Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer?
Chrome.
Excellent.
Okay. Internet Explorer not even cracking like the top 3?
No, sorry.
Fair enough. We thought we'd throw that one in there for a little bit of a laugh. What is your favorite tech gadget or tool that you can't live without, and why is it that?
I think it's probably the Google Smart TV box now that lets me manage the different streaming services. Can't go without that little remote control.
Okay. That's
awesome.
A good one. Yep.
So a little less technical. If you could only eat one type of cuisine, Italian, Mexican, Japanese, for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think I would go Italian because it gives me all the pizza options and all the pasta options, right? And I'm sure there's a healthy, vegetable-based version in there somewhere, like eggplant parmesan or something. Yeah, I think I could make do with that.
That's a very well thought out answer.
I love that was what we got the most out of you for the question.
And here, when you were like all the different types of pizzas, like, oh, of course, regular pizza, dessert pizza.
This is it, right? You can breakfast pizza. It's all good.
There's so many options and so many carbs, and that's speaking my language, quite frankly. Okay, now that we know a little bit about you, if you could, can you tell us a little bit more about a little bit of the inspiration behind founding Geo Nova Scotia and really how it came to be throughout such a difficult time, which of course was the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. So our origin story, it begins in Dartmouth North. Since 2016, an initiative there called Between the Bridges started up, provincially funded, and it was a collective impact initiative. It was meant to bring the community together with different sectors, including the private sector and the public sector and community nonprofit organizations, and use this model of what they called collective impact, or what is called collective impact, and to bring folks together in new ways to tackle complex social issues. So for a number of years, we were convening all kinds of people and having great conversations and getting to work on tackling things like transportation and student success and housing and food security, access to healthcare, all these kind of conventional and difficult things, especially in areas where income is a concern. And then we all know what happened in March 2020. The kids went home from school during March break and didn't go back that whole season. And so when that happened to us Between the Bridges, it really changed the way we worked because we had been convening people all the time. That's all we did was just in-person meetings, right? So within a few days, we all were learning Zoom. But most of the residents that we worked with, that we included in every one of these conversations, they weren't joining us. They didn't have the home computer. They didn't have the home internet access. They just made do down at the library, and nobody really thought anything of it until then. So as an organization, we were investing a lot in bringing people together in person. That's not happening. So what do? How do we solve this issue and make sure that residents and local individuals can be involved in our work? Because we really couldn't move forward without them. So we literally just took a bit of money and went out and bought a few secondhand computers and called a local internet reseller and said, hey, we don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know, few months, season. Remember, we had no idea, but we said,
Yeah.
if we paid for their internet accounts, would you hook them up? They said, sure. So that's what we did. And then we went and we hosted our first, within about 2 weeks, our first community organization meeting. So 30, 35 organizations all showed up, all virtually. And as we went around and checked in on everybody in this early days of the pandemic and the lockdown, everybody's challenges were that much worse, right? And every one of them brought up the lack of digital access for the people they served. This never came up before, right? But every one of them, whether they were the school or whether they supported seniors or whether they were local food center or youth center, all of them brought up this issue. So it was pretty clear that this was a universal challenge, that everybody was grappling with it, and none of us individually had the tools to solve this issue. None of us were tech people, we were internet people, etc. But we had this recipe already in front of us. We had access to some cheap computers and internet. We had a network of partners that already knew each other and trusted each other and knew who they were serving, right? So even to how would we find people in the community and know they need help for these partners? So that's what we did. There's another nonprofit in Dartmouth North that I'm a part of called the Public Good Society of Dartmouth. And we had a little bit of money kicking around. And so we started what we call the GEO project. GEO stands for Getting Everyone Online. And it was just a little initiative off the side of my desk where we bought computers and internet access, and through this little network of partners began to connect people. And we scraped together some money that year, and that's where it all began. It started as just a local community initiative, and it's grown from there.
Isn't it interesting that, I mean, obviously the internet is not all that new, and this problem, I think, is also not simply just because of COVID, and yet we'd never addressed it the way that we have the way that you guys have in these last couple of years. I find that fascinating.
I think specifically, with some conversations we've had with some members who are in more rural regions, like down in like Truro and Colchester, for example, where you have a lot of hilly regions and their cell towers aren't like quite as tall. And it has quite an impact on just internet connectivity in general. And I know the province has been working on, investing in that infrastructure, but it is a real challenge, not only for individuals to be able to connect, but also businesses as well, in terms of just getting in front of the right people they need, and having reliable internet is, a basic functionality of being able to, connect with one another, and that still is a challenge today.
No, absolutely, right? Like even up to 2019, there was ongoing conversations about lack of access to the internet, but it was almost exclusively, as you say, around kind of rural and remote areas, right? The infrastructure isn't there. And of course, we've had, ever since there's been an internet, there's been all kinds of organizations that help people getting online with skills, right? Library programs, adult learning organizations. So there's plenty of people in the digital inclusion space before the pandemic, but not certainly with the same kind of imperative. We all know what it was like in that first year. Everything important was online, right? And since then, more and more things have moved online to what we call digital by default, where the assumption is that everyone can access all these services, even as they're being created through an app, through a smartphone, online. And of course, that's making that digital divide bigger and bigger every single day. So yeah, the affordability piece, which is the space that we stepped into to try to close the financial gap between the cost of the devices and the cost of the internet, really hadn't kind of cracked the consciousness of us, kind of even at the community level, let alone, at the government level. And pleased to say that that's happening now.
So when we look at, the needs that are out there at the moment, sort of post-pandemic, it's so interesting. We get into these conversations about pre and post-pandemic and during the pandemic, and it seems like forever ago. But in, I guess now, what would some of those needs look like? You guys have been around for a little while now, and are there any like numbers or anything available for like the amount of people across the province who don't have access to the internet? Is there anything out there that shares insights into that accessibility?
Yeah, it's tough to put your finger on those things. We are just digging into recently released Stats Canada data, where they ask questions about internet access. So we're eager to see what that tells us. It's more recent. I think it's as of 2022.
Okay.
Certainly, we do know through kind of previous examinations that there's a number of reasons why people aren't online. And that's part of why it's tough to put your finger on it, right? Are you not online because you can't afford it, or are you not online because it's not available in your area, or are there other reasons as well? That said, our best estimates when we started Geo Nova Scotia was that about 20,000 households across the province reported not having the internet primarily because of cost. So it's not that they can access it because of where they are, but it's the price tag alone.
Mm-hmm.
So we see the poverty reports that suggest, tens of thousands of households, live below the poverty line, struggle with the cost of food and all these other things. It's the same people, right? So, we've got tens of thousands of Nova Scotians and Nova Scotian households that are struggling in some way, shape, or form. The other thing that we've seen is as the need for internet increases, right, from a nice to have to a need to have to a real, I can't get by without it. It's people are paying for internet instead of something else that they should be paying for. You know what I mean? So there are people with internet that can't afford it.
Yeah.
But they have it anyway because they are sacrificing what they might be buying for food or clothing or other things that they need because they've got a job or they've got kids who are trying to get through school, and how can they do anything without that access? So it's one thing to try to measure how many people don't have internet today. That's an interesting number, but there's other people again who are going to be on the verge of either losing their internet or sacrificing way more than they should in order to access it. So you mentioned, Greg, that the government's been doing a lot lately to build out those infrastructure, and they definitely deserve a lot of credit for that. They've I think, have done everything they possibly can in the last couple of years to move the needle and make sure that, the infrastructure is there, probably as fast as it possibly can at this point. And what we all need to do, and I believe that they see this too through their support of us, is make sure that along with that investment, right, to make sure everyone can theoretically access the internet, and everything that we're putting on there, we also need to follow up with the affordability piece to make sure everyone has the devices and access and skills. And that can't be forgotten as well, right? We talk first and a lot about the things that cost money because that's an obvious barrier we can all understand. If you don't have enough money, you can't play. But if you don't have the confidence to use and the skills to use the internet safely, then you might as well not have the internet. You're probably not going to use it anyway. And that's a little more complex, right? Everyone's a bit different how they learn, what they want to learn. And that's why organizations like ours that work in partnership with all those other partners out there in the community who already work on those issues, who already have trusting relationships with individuals. It's a real big team effort. Really proud of that.
Love that. Actually, if you don't mind there, Matt, if you could kind of elaborate on that a little bit about some of these partners that you guys do work with and how you work with them and in what capacity, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll take a step back and say the approach of how we work, of how we bring partners together and how we are together is as important to us as what we do. And so I mentioned its origins in a collective impact approach, which is kind of an academic way of describing, these processes of bringing different sectors together and building relationships amongst them and trying to tackle these complex social issues in new ways. And that philosophy very much underlies Geo Nova Scotia. We just don't use those academic terms. We use the story of Stone Soup. If you've ever heard that old fable, we've got a version of it on our website. And so, it's a story of a village filled with people who feel like they're poor, they don't have enough, and they're all drawn in to contribute the little bits they have into this big magical pot of stone soup. And sure enough, at the end of the story, what they've made is enough to feed everyone, right? And what's important there is that everybody is required to contribute to make it happen. And digital inclusion is very much like that, right? To ensure everyone has what they need to be online requires individuals, obviously, to give of their self and their time and their trust and their effort. It requires the government to help support. This is our collective resources and our collective way of organizing ourselves. And the government can show up and help with that. And it requires the private sector very much, right? The tech sector in Nova Scotia is brilliant, and they've got a lot of skills and capacity, and they know more about the internet and devices, and that's their business, right? So we bring them in. And of course, the community sector, those organizations who make it their mission to develop trusting relationships to support people one-on-one where the rubber hits the road. So we use that process to bring all those sectors together to contribute to the stone soup of digital inclusion. And just as importantly, just like in that story, the soup isn't for a handful of people, it's for everybody. And digital inclusion and the work that we're doing benefits all of those sectors who are contributing as well. This isn't a charity where somebody has resources they give to somebody else and that's the end of it, right? Like this work and ensuring people can get online for those employment training, for school, for, you know, those apps. This is allowing the government to do what they're trying to do, right? Our community sector is able to do a lot more work and serve a lot more people, reach a lot more people effectively when they're digitally included. And of course, the private sector doesn't just benefit from, hey, this is more devices and more internet being signed up, but these are also your future customers and your future employees that are being trained, right? And being better educated and better access and better digital skills, you know. And these are also, in some cases, you think of an internet supplier who's going to have that small percentage of customers cause the big percentage of headaches, right? They're falling off the bottom of the end, they're not paying bills, they're going to collection. Suddenly those accounts are becoming their most reliable accounts, right? They may not have the same markup on every month, but boys, oh boys, the bill's getting paid. And so, you know, they're very pleased with this too. So it's really great that we have all these sectors joining in. And it's really important that everyone sees and appreciates that we're all contributing something that the rest of us aren't that good at, right? But we also all benefit from it. So, you know, with that in mind, the way that we approach and deliver our programming, of course, we have wonderful tech sector partners. You know, Nova Scotia's tech sector deserves a lot of credit. You know, Eastlink and Seaside are, you know, Nova Scotia companies that have stepped up incredibly in support of this program. Devices, IMP Solutions, Data Guide Technologies, both Nova Scotia companies. All of these organizations are offering us kind of like above average products and services for way below market rate pricing,
Nice.
Partially because of our volume, right? But also because of what we're doing, and they understand and appreciate their role in what we're doing. And so it works really well. And then we deliver that through that network of community partners. So we actually have upwards of 100 different organizations in different places and different communities serving different individuals around the province that all work as a network with us to identify and support individuals.
Nice.
That's great.
I mean, the Stone Soup. And shout out to yourself, because I believe you have written the kind of updated version for your website. So it's great. I took a little read through it the other day. But you're so right. It absolutely does. It takes a village to make any of this happen. And it's great that we've got such a great tech sector here that we really can rely on. I know we know that very well at Digital Nova Scotia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I'd love to ask, and you touched on, you know, how the pandemic made you pivot in a way that I'd say is probably, you could probably say that's one of the biggest challenges. But, you know, pandemic aside, as you guys have sort of, you know, continued to, you know, offer your services, what's one of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced as an organization, excluding that sort of massive shift? Now that you guys are, you know, bringing more people online, you guys are further into, you know, the maturity of your guys' organization.
Sure. So biggest challenges, you know, one, we already touched on it. You know, if there's not physical infrastructure to get people internet, that's a problem none of us individually or even as a collective can solve, right? So that's still going to be an ongoing challenge. And the same goes for data as well, right? You know, cell phone coverage is something that, you know, until that's available everywhere, is going to be an obstacle. As far as our organization goes, you know, it's a blessing, obviously, that we've been able to grow so rapidly, and that brings with it some real challenges, right? So, you know, the challenges that would come with like a startup. The tech sector is familiar with this rapid growth. You know, we didn't exist 2.5 years ago, and then we went to one person. Now we've got 15, and so that brings with it, you know, some wonderful challenges. And I got to tell you how lucky we are, because, you know, we've been able to benefit from expertise, advice, wisdom from all kinds of organizations in the province who bring kind of their special flavor to it. So not just in the tech sector, they're not digital organizations, but I think of like organizations that have helped us recruit amazing people like P4G or Seasoned Pros, or organizations that, you know, give us kind of background advice and support like Cox and Palmer or Davis Peer Consulting, right? These sorts of organizations also, you know, have stepped up and found ways to do what they do best and help us manage some of those challenges that if we were trying to figure them out all by ourselves, right, would be probably probably too much. And if there's one other thing, I think it's the general awareness around digital exclusion and just how big an issue it is and how tough it gets. People get it when they hear it. They understand what it's like to go without an hour or a day without your connectivity. But I think all of us know what we mean when we say food security or housing security or healthcare or public education, right? But digital inclusion as kind of a shared social challenge, social imperative that we collectively need to work on to make sure everyone's there, that hasn't quite elevated yet in the social consciousness and public consciousness yet. And I think it hasn't held us back a lot yet, but it's certainly a challenge that we're rising to and trying to play a role in bringing that topic kind of more to people's minds.
It's funny that you mentioned about like the idea of going without for an hour or a day. I mean, we've all, lost power because of a storm here in the Maritimes. Or I actually remember I was working over at Micmac Mall at the time. It was, I want to say it was like 2016 or 2017. And all of a sudden, everything went down. Our point of sale system went down. Our phones went down. And you could see, like looking out into the mall, everybody was realizing it at the same time, that all of a sudden their text messages weren't going through and they couldn't search anything on their cell phone, and we were useless with our computers that were sitting in front of us. And I still remember, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I think a lot of folks would agree, I remember feeling a little bit of a panic that I didn't have that connection that I did 10 minutes ago, that I could reach out to any of my loved ones at a moment's notice, and all of a sudden I couldn't. And I think it was just that like the cell phone towers went down or something. I don't even know exactly what it was. I think it was a nationwide, like countrywide thing that happened. But again, yeah, that sudden, I don't have this instant gratification. And for folks that just experience that all the time, or maybe don't even know what that feels like because they're just so used to not having that connection, it really is such an interesting thing to, one of those like you really don't know what you've got until it's gone sort of situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, have you ever seen those reports that say, the average person, unlocks their phone, 150 times a day or something? Like it's so common to us that we almost don't notice it anymore.
Yeah.
But I was driving the other day and the commercials came on the radio, and 3 commercials in a row, I think from all 3 levels of government, and they all had important information, right? One was about healthcare, one was about this important thing, was about, and what was the call to action at the end of every commercial?
Head to our website.
Head to our website.
Yep.
So what is the experience of being somebody who, like society, all of us are collectively saying, in order to get anything, do anything, answer anything, engage with anything, go online.
Yeah.
And you can't. Like we're between the lines, we're saying you don't count. You're not included. Yep. You don't need to be here. This isn't for you. And that's not okay. For any of us, right? We can't succeed with 80% of the province online and 20%. That's not healthy for any of us. So it's amazing how quickly everything that's gone on there, right? And it's just accelerating. So we're really lucky, though. I mean, I just got to keep coming back to all the things that are going really well here in Nova Scotia on this front, right? A lot of work to do, but as you pointed out, we've got a sector that is stepping up and is really not only successful and brilliant, but sees their role in this. And we've got a government that gets it, right? Nova Scotia is one of the 3 provinces, I think, that has a department dedicated to digital solutions and digital government. There's nothing like Geo Nova Scotia anywhere in even North America, as far as we know. So we should be very proud of Nova Scotia and the leaders here in Nova Scotia in these sectors for taking the bull by the horns and really finding a way forward.
Absolutely.
Nice.
And on that positive note, I know, when we talk about some of the things that non-for-profits do, everything usually ties back to impact. Impact is so important, whether it's, you're in the health space, whether you're helping solve a need, and especially in your guys' situation. What would you say, if you could look back and say, here's one particular story or an outcome, something for a family or an individual that benefited from Geo Nova Scotia's programs? Is there something that's stuck with you as I see what our program has done here, and I've seen from start to finish how that's impacted someone, and it just recharges you into pushing forward for you guys? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, it's almost an overwhelming number of things to come to mind.
That's great.
Nice.
We do a lot of engagement with our participants, and when I'll scroll through maybe like a survey results where people are just putting things in their own words, and I'm welling up constantly. It's just
Nice.
so powerful, so emotional. The ones probably that hit me the hardest are the ones that involve families and kids. They're often multiple kids, often a single mother. Many cases, one or more kids is living with a disability. I've got 3 kids with on the autism spectrum. It hits close to home, and to think about the daily struggle, especially with the cost of living now, right? You're struggling to keep a
Yeah.
home roof over your head. You're struggling to keep them fed, and then they don't have the technology they need to participate in school. One of the special little side programs that we've developed is one specifically for iPads and special software. So in school, kids with language difficulty, right, nonverbal or other challenges like that, will get access to iPads and special apps, and in many cases learn to communicate with them.
Wow.
Wow.
And then of course, if that was my kid, what's the first thing I do is I go out and buy an iPad and the same app, so
Hmm.
they'd have the same thing at home. So we would get a call from one of our partners at Schools Plus about a year and a half ago, and they said, so we've got this kid, and the family gets by on income assistance. There's no way they would ever have this technology at home, but they're learning to communicate in school and nothing. What is there something that can be done? And of course, there is. You get them an iPad. It's really actually pretty simple.
Wow.
And that's what we've done. So we've distributed, I think, actually about 40 iPads like that this year, and those stories hit really, really close to home. Can you imagine what it would be like to not be able to communicate, first of all,
Yeah.
Mm.
and then to learn how to communicate, but only in the hours that you're at school, and then you go home and you're deprived of that ability again, and and then in a family that's of course struggling and stressed. I just can't wrap my head around those scenarios, and yet that's happening. So, those stories hit really, really close to home. I think, stories about people getting jobs, about training or finding work or landing remote jobs, are really obviously a big deal for everybody involved, everyone supporting them, and for them and their families. I think of people who have talked about connecting with families that they haven't in a long time. So, grown men crying, talking about how they hadn't spoken to their brother in 20 years.
Oh.
But now that they've got internet, they find them on Facebook, and now they're talking every week. And what does that do to someone's, we talk about mental wellness or mental health. I don't even know you can put a price tag on that. With grandparents saying, I'm seeing my baby granddaughter who's up in Newfoundland, like, be able to see and hear, or watching the kids through the app play minor hockey, right? And, these are amazing, amazing moments. But every day is filled with them, right? We don't realize this is magic that we all carry around, that we can do this, that we can reach people and do things. It's so powerful. And that's what happens every time somebody gets their hands on this stuff. They use it to make their life that much. We're newcomers. I mean, as you know, Nova Scotia's welcomed many, many newcomers lately. Wonderful, so excited to see them. Well, think of their challenges connecting with family back home and what that means for them, or what the digital world allows for language development, right? So practicing and learning new languages, let alone all the other settlement services. It's so cool because we work with all these different partners who are there for different reasons, right? So, they serve newcomers, they serve youth, they serve seniors. This is a mental health and addictions, whatever, education. They come to us. Suddenly that family, that household, the individual has the internet. Well, of course, now they have it for the reasons they showed up for. The kid can get online and do their homework, but they have it for everything else, right? It's like a 360, 24/7 access and tool for the whole world at their fingertips. And so, we know that as much as we hear these stories from individuals about what's happened, it's just a sliver of the impact and the ripple effects that happen when people have access. That's why we say that digital inclusion transforms lives, because we see it over and over and over again.
That's amazing.
Just incredible work that you guys are doing, by the way. Just wanna throw that out there one more time.
Thank you, but we can't take the credit, right? I mean, Geo is a it's a tent. It's a banner that is calling these think of the 100 organizations, multiple layers within, like the government response. There's we got an AGM coming up, and my invitation list of just government people is like 50 or 60 different people getting, please, you mean something to us, come. We've got thousands of participants now, and everybody is contributing to that stone soup. So we're so thrilled and so proud and grateful. I mean, holy moly, the way everyone steps up and just brings what they can with so much humility and appreciation for each other. I mean, some of the relationships that we see, they're almost like happy side effects, right? Like either between some of these other sectors and partners who are working together because of their connection working through us that maybe they wouldn't have before. It really is transformative, not just for the individuals, who are receiving the support, but for the organizations involved, for the businesses involved, for the government departments involved. We see their work transforming as well. This is systems change stuff. It's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that leads perfectly to our last question, which is, how can folks get involved to help you guys out, to do a little bit of, some support? How can they help you help others?
Oh, well, sure. So the first thing I would say is go to our website and click on the Stay Informed button in the top right. So any big news will come out through that channel. There are a couple of dedicated pages if you are, belong to an organization that you think would make a good referral partner. There's a pipeline for that where you come to information sessions and we talk about those possibilities. And of course, you can just reach out if you're inspired or have any kind of idea or questions about how you may want to participate. I mean, digital inclusion is a big issue, right? We're not the only place where that happens. And the other thing I should make a pitch for right now is we are planning, I'm putting myself out there now, this is talk, I say it publicly, we have to do it. But we're planning a very modest digital inclusion conference.
Okay.
And we're hoping to pull that off in October. So this would be, as far as we know, Nova Scotia's first digital inclusion conference. It'll be virtual for the most part to allow us to really invite everybody involved, whether they're part of the GEO network or part of the much larger ecosystem of digital inclusion from all these sectors, to try to get them in under one virtual roof and just, see just how many of them there all are and all the incredible things, the initiatives that are going on, right? Everyone's so busy trying to, enhance their digital work. They rarely have time to tell other folks about it or to hear what other people are doing. And I can tell you it's going to be quite a showcase of initiatives across all sectors that are changing people's lives and really bringing the digital space into Nova Scotia and really making a difference.
Wow.
Very cool.
Well, anything we can do to support, from Digital Nova Scotia's standpoint, we'd love to be involved in any way and continue to support the amazing work that you guys are doing. So please keep us in touch on that. And I think that's an incredible event that we wouldn't want to miss.
Absolutely. We'll keep our eyes peeled.
You'll definitely be invited.
Oh, perfect.
Excellent.
There we go. We snagged our invite.
Exactly.
Matt, we, like I say, that's it for our questions. But if there is anything, I mean, you just gave a really great plug, but if there's anything else that you wanted to highlight about the work that you guys are doing, the floor is yours.
You know what? I'm scrolling over my notes to see what are the most important things that I might have missed.
Nice.
If I was to reiterate any one thing that I've already said, it's that Nova Scotia really is a leader in digital inclusion. Like, it's easy to see the work left to do. It's easy to know that there's a big gap between where we are and where we would all agree that we should be. But I don't think there's any jurisdiction in at least in North America, certainly in Canada, that is doing more, is being more innovative, is really pulling in everybody who needs to be involved and sharing that work in a way that Nova Scotia is. And I think we should all be incredibly proud of our tech sector, of our public sector, and certainly of our hundreds of community organizations. Many are our partners, and there's many more who aren't directly connected to us, but who do this really great work on all our behalf in communities every day. And so, I just exceptionally grateful for all of that, but very, very proud of Nova Scotia in that front as well.
Awesome.
Excellent.
I think that's a great spot to leave it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Matt. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, sharing the amazing work that's being done, not only by GEO Nova Scotia, but all of those partners and members of government and everyone that comes together to make your work so successful and meaningful, and understanding that there's so much left to do. We hope to have you again on someday, and hopefully be able to share some more success stories. So really thankful for your time today.
It's been my pleasure.
Recorded by This Is Marketing, unblanding branding since 2015.